by the way. Good evening, Scratchy. How are you doing, sir?
Night, yeah, viewers, neighbor. A wonderful night. Hear the call.
It's cold. It's cold in Canada. Is Scratchy?
Very, very cool.
Scratchy, would you agree with me that from where you are in Canada, you could not cover the situations on the ground in Jamaica like Jamaicans could? All right.
I mean, definitely not, neighbor. I'll be definitely relying on second-hand news, neighbor. Second-hand news, neighbor. And you know, if it was a kid, neighbor, I used to play that game that they call Chinese telephone. Every time the news come to a different person, neighbor, the news is skewed, it's sent in a different way. So, outside of Jamaica, neighbor, it's definitely second-hand news. We might rely on traditional media, or we might rely on persons who might have personal attention, connection to get information. But it's definitely second-hand, neighbor, not first-hand as you guys. We definitely have a better understanding of what is going on.
Now, Scratchy, a lot of what we are dealing with in Jamaica called misinformation is originating from these overseas platforms. Don't you agree?
I mean, I'm on social media and based on what I'm seeing, neighbor. Yes, definitely from overseas, neighbor.
Yeah. Now, Scratchy, why is it that supporters of your party, who call themselves online bloggers, why do they go into spaces that they know are hostile to them only to be thrown off and disrespected? Why do they do it?
You see a lot of these, bloggers, neighbor, especially on the Jamaica Labour Party side, neighbor. What I've realized a lot of these bloggers, neighbor, is that everyone, neighbor, don't share the same belief. Everyone is not on the platform for the same goal. So I believe, neighbor, that a lot of persons are here on the platform, neighbor, to gain some form of popularity, to gain some form of name, and stuff like that. That is basically what I'm seeing. Neighbor. My reason for saying that is, no matter what, neighbor, if you go should see a PNP platform, neighbor, with 500 people over there, you can't tell me that it's the discussion that is going over there that entices you why you want to go over there. The numbers that you see why you want to go over there.
Is the numbers?
Yeah, the number is why you want to go over there. So clearly, it's not about sending any message nearby. It's just the clout you're grabbing nearby. A lot of these persons are clout grabbing because if 500 persons is over a PNP line neighbor, no matter what kind of misinformation is being spread over there, you go over there as a lone cat in a freedom, then you can't change nobody's mind. They will not listen to nothing that you're saying. They're only going to ridicule you, laugh off of you, and you're going to feeling embarrassed because they're going to shame you.
Yes, and isn't that exactly what is happening? That's what I see happening.
That is exactly what is happening, neighbor. And a lot of these JLP so-called bloggers, neighbor, they need to understand, neighbor, that you made a valid point. Support your local platforms. There are persons like Kimmy over there and stuff like that, neighbor. But again, neighbor, I tell you that there's a different set of things. There's also some JLP bloggers, neighbor, and I can't say anything I want to say, neighbor. They can't do me anything. You know, I guarantee 100% that I can't get a thump in my mouth.
I don't care a damn.
Yeah, I guarantee 100% that I can't get a thump in my mouth. So
now,
definitely, when I look at some of these guys,
hold on, Scratchy. Hold on. You know, see, a man can't thump in your mouth still in a Scratchy, but boy, in no say in the kind of dark.
No, I think you know that stupid night and you have to try and make that him there. I don't think that's
That's why we not trouble nobody and we're not afraid of nobody. We just stay in our corner.
Definitely not, neighbor. If I notice to come and hold our own neighbor, I never try to even go on some of these platforms. To be even said, I'm even blocked from some of these platforms, neighbor.
Yes.
And I don't have nothing against it. So what I'm saying now before that, neighbor, is that a lot of these JLP bloggers, neighbor, they have a thing about them, a top-end thing about them, neighbor, where if they believe that they didn't go up a Papine or go up a Warp Road or whichever one of these, where they're the two main institutions are, neighbor, of higher learning, you're a stupid or you're a dunce, or their presence is not relevant on your type of platform. So when you look at it now, neighbor, look at even your platform, for example, a nice platform, they look up to you as a host, but notice, neighbor, you have a set of bloggers, neighbor. You have a set of bloggers, neighbor, where once a high-profile PNP member is on any platform, you see these bloggers run to those platforms, neighbor, as if they are the only ones who are equipped with information that can come and counter whatever these persons are saying, as if they were sent by a team or something. So, as I say, neighbor, we are not bought because we are not paid for, neighbor, because no one is going to tell us what we can and cannot say on this platform, neighbor.
That's right.
And that is one of the main reasons why a lot of them don't come on this platform, neighbor. Because the information that we share, they want to tell us what, they've tried it before, they want to tell us what we can and cannot share. Neighbor, I have been on a platform already and a question was asked. And in my attempt to answer the question, someone in the chat was telling me that I should not answer, I should let someone else answer the question. So when you tell me that, you're basically telling me that I am stupid just because you feel like it's all right scratching have a degree or something, neighbor. There's a lot of these labor right people, neighbor, where if you don't have a degree or you don't come out certain way on these platforms, neighbor, you will never get them support. And you can look at it and look at it all around and you see, look at the platforms where they run to, look at the platforms where they rush to. Through this guy, this new guy who come about, Noel, who is definitely not the first Noel.
Yes, the first Noel. I tell you.
Definitely not the first Noel, neighbor. I see the other them because of accent and things like that. That is why you see they run go over there, neighbor. Those are the things that they run down. I see you the other day, you say your platform is going down.
I heard him cussing them out today. This is why I said it. I mean, someone sent something to me. He was telling them that they need to stay under them lane. Don't come to his space, right? They're not welcome over. And I was saying to myself, but why are they allowing themselves to be treated like this? Why go to this man's space when the man said to you, say, listen, I'm not inviting you here. You're not welcome here. Then if a man tell me, say, no, they're not welcome me here, Scratchy. Why am I going to go there?
Exactly, neighbor. So I tell you that I don't know what these guys, these guys have been on the platform for a period of time now, neighbor. The platform is basically split. If you see a PNP person having a life and you see 300 or 400 people over there, that is 300 or 400 PNP. No need question, no need to tell you that. So what kind of point you think you can go over there and come across with? On a PNP life.
Can't win.
You're fighting a losing battle, you can't win. You cannot win. They're not going to listen to you. They're going to ridicule you. They're going to do all type of thing to try to bring you down. And you're going to look stupid at the end.
It's like in the United States, Scratchy. Very few Democrats go over to Fox,
Because neighbor, you go on Fox, you'll be ridiculed, you'll be skewed, they're gonna mock you, they're gonna bring you down.
Yes. And in the same breath, very few Republicans are going to go over
CNN
and MSNBC. Yeah.
CNN, neighbor, as I say, neighbor, a lot of these bloggers, neighbor, and I'm gonna show you a point. That's why every time when you ask me, you say, Scratchy, what kind of role you think social media played a big role in the Labour Party victory? I always tell you to an extent, neighbor. Neighbor, I want you to look at a lot of these JP bloggers, and I not bash them tonight or anything, but we are talking facts. Neighbor, They are popular on this platform. They are popular right across the platform. Neighbor, you know how much of them member of parliament lose them constituency? Your influence is so big on these platforms, but you have none in your community or the ground where it matters most.
Wow. Interesting.
And I'm not sure, I'm not dissing anybody, but the reality is supporting each other. All we are saying the same message. Yes, support each other. But give Kimmy the strength. 5-6 hours go flood up over Kimmy and make the followers and run come. And give Kimmy the numbers. Kimmy on from morning till when. Give Black King, get all type of different support other person. Stop feel like say the discussion is not top end to a certain level. Because some of the things I want to discuss with people in the business about, I don't want to tell some of it, Some of the things I want to discuss are things that people don't care about. The voting population don't care about what someone want to discuss about some time.
Yes.
I tell you straight neighbor, the voting population don't care. Do not care about some of these things when some of them I talk about. I'm not bashing or just the truth me I talk. I wouldn't like it, I just say go. Yeah, definitely never. So the things.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't have a problem with it at all. I tell you the truth. Scratchy. I've been on a couple myself, but I go where they're friendly towards me. I'm not going in any hostile tribe. Scratchy. I wouldn't do that at all. Because I go and win. I can't win an argument.
I don't even go on another JLP live, neighbor. Only Kimmy live I might pop in for like 3 minutes, not even longer than 3 minutes. I don't go on no other live, neighbor, because I I do sometimes, neighbor, I don't want to be a part of any agenda. I don't want to be programmed. I don't
Yes,
want to be scripted. And I don't
yes.
want nobody neighbor if you tell me what I can or cannot say. I definitely not gonna stand for that, neighbor.
Well,
It's
you
a
know what
part me,
our
yeah, I'm definitely not gonna stand for that.
editorial policy over here is scratchy. That we declare ourselves as independent thinkers, and our thoughts are towards the truth, which aligns with a particular party. That's it. Nothing beyond that.
Exactly. I am a Labourite neighbor, and as a Labourite, I can talk about any topic that has to do with my party or the government that I support, and no one can come and tell me about this is that or that is that. You should not talk about that. No one cannot come and tell me. Neighbor, a lot of these guys, I've told you before, you know, there's a big difference between Labourite and JLP supporters. A lot of these guys, neighbor, they are JLP supporters. They are not Labourite, neighbor. JLP supporter, neighbor, is someone who they stand with a specific member of parliament, or in most cases, neighbor, they stand with the leader of the party. I know, or they love the leader of the party. Neighbor, I love my party and I stand with my leader. I am a Labourite, neighbor. I am a Labourite, and I believe that this political organization is bigger than all of us. Labour Party formed from motion years ago, neighbor, and it is still standing. No much leader has been through Labour Party since now. Neighbor, I am a Labourite, and anything that has to do with the Labour Party, no little blogger cannot come and tell me so I cannot talk about that. Because a lot of just coming at this. I can't come program me, no time. I would not take any program from none of them, neighbor. That's why I don't go on them platform, neighbor, because they want to tell you what you can or cannot say. And I stand with my leader, neighbor, but I love my party. I am a Labourite. I'm not a JLP supporter. You can support the party today, and next election you decide you're not going to support the party. That's not me. I am a Labourite. I support my party till death.
Wow. Well, you know, Scratchy, just reinforcing that. I suspect that if they are going to have greater effect, they are going to have to come together and come up with a strategy. I think so.
Neighbor, definitely, neighbor. For us, for the message, neighbor, have to be more effective, neighbor. And for the message to reach out there, neighbor. Each and every one of our platform, neighbor, have a different set of following, a collective following, neighbor. So it should be set on a level, neighbor, where some form of, a pass-through is going on this platform, Labourite platform, where you say, spread a message, spring across and know, say, everyone can get a better understanding of what is going on. When the message be central type of different way, neighbor, sometimes the message, neighbor, can be too much information, or too much, the persons who are receiving, neighbor, can be overwhelmed with too much information. So we must take a different approach, neighbor, a more collective approach, neighbor, approach that is non-confrontational, no form of competition. We're all here doing the same thing. No one, I don't know about anybody else. I can't say no one, but I definitely know for Politics Plus, neighbor, we are not being paid. So we definitely do this out of the love of we are, neighbor, and for the love of Jamaica, and certain of us for the love of our party. But I definitely never think that we can come together, neighbor, give support and give strength to persons who support the movement that you also support, instead of going over other person's platform, giving them strength, bringing your followers over there with them. They have a certain amount of numbers, look in their eye, feel like they're on top of the world, can come down and come and disrespect you back now in some form of way. They're talking, neighbor. I saw one today, neighbor. I was watching a specific live today, and I didn't like what I saw, neighbor. I definitely didn't like what I saw, but I mean, that's how you go, neighbor, when you're going into the swine pen, neighbor, you roll with the swines, they draw you in the mud. And I think that's exactly what happened earlier on today, neighbor. Very unfortunate situation, but nonetheless.
Very, very unfortunate. I saw today that I felt so embarrassed. But then I as I said, there's so much that we could say, but we say it off here. Caller, Howard Hill, are you on or are you not?
I mean, that wasn't my time.
Are you on or you not?
That was my time, so I
don't think you are. Cut that off. Yes, Scratchy, I'd love you to double down on the whole fact of your supporters, your people online. Because you realize, Scratchy, that these live programs are having tremendous impact in the talk show industry in Jamaica. It's almost as if talk show is being revived through lives.
I mean, definitely, neighbor, because the information again and the amount of persons who are coming on these live, neighbor, for this type of information, neighbor. I just think we just need to continue to push the information. Don't be fooled or don't get too hype about whatever we see in the eye, how much persons are watching or viewing or stuff like that. Just continue to keep focused, keep steady. We have a mission to push. And if we are doing this collective and we do the same job, neighbor, I don't see the reason why we should be competing. To another person might say there's no competition going on, but I can definitely sense some form of competition, neighbor. I can definitely sense some form of hostility, even when I go to in the chat of other persons live and stuff like that, neighbor. But even you said it earlier, and a lot of these persons, neighbor, they are not regular attendees and even this live a platform like this. I don't know why they're not regular attendees as strong, neighbor. And I think the discussion over here is worthy, where they can definitely come and partake with whatever degree or masters that they think they might have.
I see. They don't come here, sir. I don't know what their problem is. They don't come here at all. I'm shocked, sir. I see them full of other places in like 6, 7 of them, and they stay off Hello Neighbor. Why? I don't know why they stay off. Anyway,
I think it's me, neighbor. I think I think they're not into scratching, neighbor.
Is you?
Yes, neighbor. I definitely think, neighbor. Neighbor, trust me, neighbor. I've been meditating it and thinking it and seeing it, and I can tell. I should have come over here when I'm not here and talk to you, neighbor. I think a lot of these guys, neighbor, they are definitely not into scratching. A lot of these JLP bloggers, neighbor, I don't know what kind of feathers I have ruffled in the past of these people or what, neighbor. But a lot of these, they are definitely not into me, neighbor. They are not into me. Neighbor, even if some of them come on the platform and they see me, neighbor, they don't highlight me or anything. They don't say scratchy or anything. Neighbor, if I go on Kimmy live right now and I'm in the chat, Kimmy say, come scratchy, add. If I go over that Judge Sim, neighbor, Judge say, come scratchy, add. They can't go over for them live, neighbor. When I mean at the box, them play blind. They don't recognize scratchy, neighbor. They don't like the type of scratchy that scratchy bring out the information. These guys scratchy have done.
Right like you, sir, is not recognized.
Yes. Yeah, to these guys, scratchies are done, neighbor. These guys don't recognize scratchy, neighbor. I'm telling you. Yeah, definitely, neighbor. They don't recognize scratchy. But I'm not seeking their recognition. I'm not seeking any recognition from them, but I'm just stating the fact, neighbor. That's why they don't come over here.
Well, you're one of the ace number one Labour Party commentators, sir. I don't think there's any second to you. But Scratchy, as I said today, I just was somebody sent me some information and said, neighbor, listen to this. And when I listened and hear how the man was treating the Labour Party supporters, I said to myself, oh my God, I wish I could just help them. I wish if I could just get them to understand that they're not helping themselves, or maybe it is that they like the attention. I don't know what it is.
I don't need a neighbor. I tell neighbor, I don't know what is the objective or what is there to gain, neighbor. I don't see nothing to gain because, as I said before, neighbor, we have been on this platform before. We have seen how this platform operates, neighbor. Once a live click, neighbor. Once you see the narrative that is pushing it from the PNP and you see certain persons over there, it is clear as day that those are supporters of the People's National Party. So I don't see what you can go over there or what power you think you have or you can go change these people's mind.
Why are they inviting me over there, sir? Why they want me there?
I think maybe, neighbor, you're someone who to them, neighbor, you might come across on a level where you're not seen as tribal as a scratchy. You're not seen driven by a part. Yeah, they might not see you as tribal as a scratchy, neighbor. They might not see you as someone who push or could say the neighbor as a labor right or this or something like that, They might skew you to that level based on how the platform is set up and the things that you talk about it the facts, but they still see you as someone who can have a balanced, what they call a balanced discussion with neighbor. And that is why they might crave your attention to come over there, neighbors, because they might think that you can share some form of ray, or they might want to challenge you also to try to prove that they are more journalistic than you.
Yes.
And stuff like that,
Yes, sir. This is so true. Be my guest. Aisha. They want to embarrass the neighbor.
They can't embarrass the neighbor.
Anyway, Scratchy. Scratchy, I also raise the whole matter of the people in West Holland, Scratchy, who are anxious to get help from this Melissa thing, and are suggesting that the government is moving slowly, Scratchy. You think that the government is moving slowly?
Definitely not, neighbor. I don't think it's the government that is moving slow, neighbor. I think it's a process, neighbor. The process might be, but the process is definitely not being slowed down, neighbor. All things are so bad, neighbor, in terms of the things that the common person might not readily understand, neighbor, in terms of the inner runnings, neighbor, of how government operate, in terms of the distribution of whatever aid, neighbor, or whatever building materials, neighbor, what have to be accounted for, and even the problem that is going on down there in Westmoreland in particular, neighbor, with land. There's a lot of land issue, neighbor, that need to be sorted out down there in Westmoreland. I would expect that right now there's a lot of negotiation going on between government and private owners of these lands, neighbor, in terms of how the lease towards these land might look in the future, so that government can now step in, because, neighbor, government cannot go and build a house on a land, neighbor, that government has no control over, where a proper lease is not in term, not just a proper lease, a long-term lease, neighbor, where government can build a concrete house on that land, or some form of title or ownership. So the persons in Westmoreland or people in Westmoreland, neighbor, they need to understand that whatever situation, they have to understand that they were the ones who were living in this situation, neighbor. They were the ones who didn't get the land titles or get their land sorted out, try to proper way to get proper lease and stuff like that. So they must also give the government time, neighbor. The government cannot go ahead, neighbor, and put house on these lands, neighbor, and then face a lawsuit after. It has to be a one-time thing. This is not the government of the past, where PNP put people in slum and stuff like that. We're trying to make a different approach. The government, number one thing, is trying to be more resilient, so that in case we should get a next storm like this come next year, neighbor, in our hurricane season, neighbor, not to say yes, we will withstand it to 100%, but to a certain level, we might put this roof thing to a pass, or certain flooding and stuff like that. So Westmoreland persons just have to understand, neighbor, that yes, we understand what you guys are going through, but at the same time, you have to understand also how government operates. It have to be a balance, neighbor. These persons have to understand how to strike that balance. And I think their local representative, neighbor, are not helping the government in that. And it's such a shame that these guys want to be claim themselves that they are a part of the government, but they are not helping the government, neighbor, in terms of telling the people on the ground how government operate, telling the people on the ground what is to come and how it will become. They are failing on that part, neighbor. They're amplifying the people's plight, neighbor, and pushing and using and riding the wave and riding the sympathy and the pain of these people, neighbor, to amplify their own political gain. And it is just so sad.
Yeah, let's go to the JPS, Scratchy. The government of Jamaica has given the JPS 150 million US dollar loan. The JPS has introduced a 7% increase in electricity charges. It is not going down well in Jamaica at all, Scratchy. The minister today came out and said the independent regulator, the OUR, basically can't do anything about it because of the contract that JPS has. Scratchy, isn't this a sellout of the Jamaican people to have locked us into this contract that is hurting the poor?
Definitely, neighbor. The JPS contract, neighbor, that was signed by the People's National Party, neighbor, was definitely, neighbor, a contract, neighbor, that benefited whoever was the operators, neighbor, the owners of JPS. It wasn't a contract, neighbor, that was balanced to a certain level to the citizens who are the majority and who are the recipients and the receivers of whatever product JPS is offering. So again, neighbor, government, neighbor, that failed its people, neighbor, because whatever government goes to the negotiation table, neighbor, with any organization or group, neighbor, the plight of the people, neighbor, and whatever contract you're going to sign, the people must benefit in a way. Even if you look at our constitution, neighbor, our constitution, our laws are set up, neighbor. Our constitution and our laws are set up for the benefit of the people, neighbor. So you have to make sure, neighbor, that these things are things that you put in place. The people must be at the forefront of any type of these contracts. Now, I said it earlier, neighbor, that Mr. Philip Palwell, neighbor, should be removed, neighbor, and speaking on anything that has to do with JPS, neighbor. Philip Palwell, neighbor, shouldn't be allowed to be standing up in our parliament or go in front of any media house and speak on anything that has to do with JPS, neighbor. That guy needs to be removed totally from the process. Now, what JPS now and the OUR now, neighbor, when you look at OUR, the Office of Utility Regulation, neighbor, they are responsible for utilities organization in Jamaica, not just JPS, yes, telephone companies, and all of those type of other utilities. But yes, neighbor, there's nothing much that OUR can do, neighbor, based on the contract. I think what OUR did best, neighbor, JPS was, I believe, was asking for 16%. I think what OUR did best was to say to JPS that, okay, I cannot just put the 16% on the backs of the people one time. Try to see how best the 16% can be spread over a period of time.
But they won't get the 16%. It's just that they won't get it one time.
Yes, they won't get it one time. The 16% will be spread over a period of time. So I think that was the only thing that the OUR could do. But in terms of telling JPS that no, you cannot get an increase at this time, neighbor, it based on the contract and the disaster that we're going through, neighbor, it gives JPS that right, neighbor, to ask for an increase. And even before, neighbor, the hurricane, JPS was telling us this increase.
You say you're a labor, right? You say you're a labor. How did the PNP manage, Scratch, to do so well in this election? They are a bunch of failures, man.
Definitely, neighbor. The People's National Party is a bunch of failure, neighbor. And again, neighbor, you ask how did the PNP manage to do so well, neighbor? There's a popular saying, neighbor, where they say that money make the mayor run, neighbor. And I think that was the reason for the PNP doing so what you call so good at the polls in the last election. It was the malignant use of money. That was what the opposition leader said, right?
Malignant, yes.
Malignant use of money, definitely. Thanks to the correction. So I think that was what skewed the election, neighbor, towards the People's National Party. And what I'm looking at, neighbor, with what JPS is doing, because again, neighbor, JPS could have also been considerate in themselves, neighbor.
Yes.
And push back that raise increase, neighbor. But I think the JPS, neighbor, based on how the government is dealing with them towards this contract, neighbor, they're also trying to create some form of misery index amongst the population against the government, neighbor. And I think an investigation needs to be launched, neighbor. And we need to find out, neighbor, if the JPS and the PNP is in bed. Because I strongly believe that the JPS, neighbor, and the opposition is tangling, is doing tango together.
But isn't that what the opposition is calling for? An open, transparent. They want OUR to release the negotiation terms to say how did they arrive at the 7%? Isn't that what the PNP is asking for?
Exactly, neighbor. The PNP is trying to be deceitful, neighbor. They're trying to trick us in our eyes, neighbor. The People's National Party and the JPS, neighbor, I believe they are in some form of tango, neighbor, because the government is telling JPS that no matter what, you're not going to get this 15% increase, neighbor. So the JPS now is saying back to the government, okay, no matter what, we're not going to be lenient. We're not going to push back this tax increase, this wage, this bill increase. We're going to push it on the back of the people. It's going to be on your December bill coming and one of the most festive seasons. So again, neighbor,
the people are
JPS know what they're doing.
People are squealing, scratching. The people are hurting and they are going to blame the government.
Yes, neighbor. All misery index that is rising in a country, neighbor, tend to reflect on the government, neighbor. And that is what the JPS is doing, neighbor. They know exactly what they're doing.
JPS wants to hurt the government?
Yes, neighbor. JPS wants to hurt the government, neighbor. JPS wants to hurt this government. JPS didn't want but this government to farm the government in the neighbor. That we don't be fool, don't be will that. The Jamaica Public Service, neighbor, didn't want but the Jamaica. You wouldn't want but a man who's telling you that you're not going to get a renewal in your contract before even the election. That man is telling you that your contract will not be renewed. We will be going back to the negotiating table.
Do you think it was a bad strategy for the government to have announced that before the election?
I don't think it was a bad strategy, neighbor. I think the government had a timeline that the government had to make a decision, neighbor, towards JPS, neighbor, because it's a business, neighbor, and they have to know where they stand and how they get their balance sheet and stuff in order, neighbor. So the government had a timeline where the government had to let JPS know, I believe 2 or 2.5 years prior to the renewal of the contract, where we're starting so that the investors and persons know. So the government had to make it public, neighbor. It's just a coincidence that the election was in that period, but the government had to let them know that we will not be renewing your contract. We'll be going back to the negotiating table.
Okay, and you are saying to me, Scratchy, thinking broadly here, that this 7% is definitely going to cause some misery. You see the Small Business Association saying that people should protest, but it's a protest against the JPS. But at the end of the day, Scratchy, the government of Jamaica will be seen as responsible for this. Don't you think?
I mean, neighbor, there are three organizations in Jamaica, neighbor, that mainly rise the misery index, neighbor. the Jamaica Public Service, neighbor, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and the People's National Party. Now, we have seen, neighbor, where this government have cleaned up the Jamaica Constabulary Force, neighbor, and put it to a professional organization, neighbor. We have seen, neighbor, where this government, neighbor, have also cleaned up the PNP, neighbor, and have them in a third-term opposition, neighbor. So our main problem now, neighbor, we have cleaned them up, neighbor, and put them in a position, neighbor, for 3 terms now, neighbor. So our main next misery index, neighbor, that need to be cleaned up is the Jamaica Public Service, neighbor. And we cannot clean up that just like how we do the PNP or just like how we go about with the Jamaica Constabulary Force. It has to be done, neighbor, through a contractual way, a professional way. And that is what this government is about, neighbor. We are fixing the misery index, neighbor, that the government doesn't have direct control over, that are causing misery upon our people. That is what the government is doing.
Wow. Wow. So you agree with me, because I looked at it today, Scratchy, and I saw where the JPS, Scratchy, the fact that they got this this loan could have be a little bit more considerate and delay the increase. You don't think?
Definitely, neighbor. The JPS know exactly what they're doing, neighbor. This is December, neighbor. The most consumption of electricity, neighbor, is used in this period of time, neighbor. So with the increase, neighbor, they will definitely be reaping in a lot of excess amount of profit for a profit of this month, neighbor. But again, neighbor, this is a disaster, neighbor. It is not just the responsibility, a collective effort, neighbor, from all of us. But what I would like to ask, neighbor, is we have seen where every single organization, everyone have given back, neighbor. What has JPS really give back, neighbor, in this disaster, neighbor? I think JPS, neighbor, is definitely, neighbor. Their contract need to be renewed, neighbor. They are not patriotic, neighbor. They are all for profit. And we don't want organizations or leaders of organizations like this in our country, neighbor. We are in our most time of disaster and our time of distress. You push pain and agony upon our most vulnerable.
But then, Scratchy, we also have to lay the blame squarely at the feet of the government that negotiated the contract and put the people of Jamaica in this situation.
The government of the day, neighbor, that signed that contract with the JPS, neighbor, was a cruel government, neighbor, was an uncaring government, neighbor, and a government, neighbor, who any members of that government who is still alive, neighbor, they should be hauled before the court, neighbor. This border treason, neighbor. The JPS, neighbor, is an organization, neighbor, with this contract, neighbor, that have crippled our manufacturing sector, neighbor. They have sent our people, neighbor, to resort to stealing electricity, neighbor, and despite the people stealing electricity, neighbor, JPS still tax-paying customers for this theft of electricity. Neighbor, this is an organization, neighbor, that has rippled our country. They have benefited of the back of us, neighbor. They have sold this company from one person to one next company, neighbor. Persons who were in debt around the world, neighbor, bought JPS, paid off their debt in 5 years' time, sold back JPS and made a wonderful profit. Neighbor, the JPS is a cash cow for foreign investors. And we know we have local investors, but our local business have minimal shares. So, neighbor, we need to get this business, this company back. I don't think the government can run it. I am not advocating for government to take it over, neighbor. It needs to be in private hands, but it needs to be in private hands, neighbor, with persons who are considerate, persons who are loyalist, neighbor, and persons who are patriotic Jamaicans and who understand the plight of our people. Not some foreign investor, neighbor, who is all about profit and loss.
Boy, Scratchy, believe me, Scratchy, the full story of Jamaica is not told. And the PNP, they have lots of questions to answer, Scratchy. I tell you the truth. Lots of questions.
I mean, definitely, neighbor, the PNP has a lot of questions to answer, neighbor. And it's just so shocking, neighbor, that we would not be around when time a lot of these questions have to be answered. Because despite you have a thing they call access to information in the neighbor.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah, Scratchy is on a little break there. Just give him a little
Yes,
break.
neighbor.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so where there's access to information, where I believe after 35 years or something like that, you can access the minutes of cabinet meetings.
That's after we did.
Yes, I would definitely love to see the minutes, neighbor, the cabinet meetings, neighbor, of that 1990 PNP government, neighbor, because I can definitely tell you, neighbor, that government, neighbor, they did us so bad, neighbor. That government is responsible for every single atrocities, neighbor, that we are facing as Jamaican, neighbor. The low cost of living, neighbor.
Yes.
The shambles that our people are living in, neighbor.
High crime.
How corrupt our organizations are, neighbor. Every single ill that Jamaica suffers from right now, neighbor, is as a result of the People's National Party, neighbor. By 1989, you know, to show you, you see, an election fraud and all of those things are invented by PNP, neighbor. In 1989, you know, you think, neighbor, Mr. Siaga was running on performance in 1989 election. There was a thing where the PNP introduced, neighbor, that labor right was lost. So my grandfather gave me the history, neighbor. It was called the golden ballot. They used the golden ballot in 1989 to send home us as labor right.
What is that, sir?
Neighbor, the golden ballot, neighbor, is when you go into the polling station and the polling clerk on your 2 ballot, and you go to the polling booth now and you mark one, and you go outside and give somebody the next one, and that one already mark an X, and they go in and they continue to repeat the cycle like that. That is what the PNP used and beat the Jamaica Labour Party in 1989. Come back to the 1993. Them tell the Labour Party don't know nothing about that style. Labour Party lost to what is going on. Labour Party lost to what the golden ballot, neighbor, PNP used in 1989 to beat us, neighbor. No one saw that coming. The Mr. Siaga did a wonderful work in Gilbert, run a performance, and they used the golden ballot to defeat
golden ballot
him.
right now must be money.
The golden ballot is what we lost. And the golden ballot beat us all the way to 93, 97. And we didn't know what was going on. We were lost.
Oh my.
And you can look at the election result from 1989 to 97 and look at the drastic shift from 97 to 2002.
They wiped out the Labour Party, quite frankly.
And look at the drastic shift, neighbor.
52 to 8.
Exactly. 52 to 8.
Only won 2 seats, 10 to 50.
Exactly. Oh, where and gather you can hear about that. The golden ballot, neighbor, was what the PNP was using, neighbor, to beat Labour Party left, right, and center. Labour Party found out about golden ballot late. Late.
Jesus Christ. Hold on there for me, Scratchy. What are you saying to me here tonight? Well, Harry, are you in the chat, or Kerry? We've cracked 9 o'clock and it's 8 minutes after. Our time is up, you know, but we could go a little longer. But of course, we're going to need to ask you to make a contribution to extending us until 10 o'clock, please. Harry, can we get 5 persons to help us for 1 hour, please? Can we get 5 persons to sponsor the show for the extra 1 hour, 9 to 10? 5 persons, put $20 to the Zelle account. Can you post the Zelle for me, Harry, please? We're asking us to help us to go for 1 more hour. 1 more hour, and that's 10:09. So we'll give you 1 hour. Where is Harry? Post the Zelle account for me. 954-635-8732. 954-635-8732.
What song name? I listen reggae. I listen dancehall. I listen hip-hop. I listen R&B.
Yeah.
After I listen to Celine Dion and them.
Nice. By the way, how is Keisha? How is Keisha?
Keisha is okay, man. Big up Keisha every time. Supposed to just a reaching for her. Yeah, CJ, bro. I think CJ said that, yo.
Oh boy, I tell you. 12 after 9 and everything is fine over here.
Still a clock 30 at Caesar, man. Still a clock 30, man.
Tune on your night, Tuesday night. My goodness gracious. All right, let's go back. Going in and out, eh? Hello, Lee. Hi, sir. Hi.
Yeah, now you're past sleep, boss.
Go ahead.
I tried to get past sleep, but anyway, just one word I have to say. All these PNP who criticize the government, all they need is 2 sheets of zinc to be a tide. That's all they want, and we don't talk for the night. Thank you.
Okay, very well. All right, I'm gonna try close down the box. Hold on for me here. Okay, so there are 30 people who have sent requests to come up here now. 30. No, I don't know which one of you really want to come up. Could you just type that in the chat that you have sent a request and I'll take you up? Because I can't take up 30. And I'm sure some of you are not even, some of you don't know that you are even up, eh? All right, Scratchy, you're there, Scratch? I see where the JTA today, Scratchy, is saying that the government will have to ride and whistle because they are pushing forward with their claims. Don't you think that the JTA ought to be a little bit more sensitive to the times? Isn't this the same JTA that agreed to a wage freeze? What's happening?
Again, Neighbour, one of the surrogates, Neighbour, one of the so-called garrisons, Neighbour, that I always tend to go in support. I try to create some form of misery whenever the Jamaica Labour Party is in power. I've seen them done this, Neighbour, with almost every single administration of the Jamaica Labour Party, Neighbour. They did it with Bruce Golding and all the Shaw. They tried it before with Andrew and the same on the Nigel Clark. Now they're trying to do it again, Neighbour. These guys have an agenda, Neighbour. Time and time, Neighbour, we see where the presidents or most of the presidents of the Jamaica JTA, Jamaica Teacher Association, Neighbour, they tend to lean towards the opposition. Time and time, we see these persons come and offer themselves for political representation. So it always shown, Neighbour, that these guys are a proxy. They are never going to ever, Neighbour, try to be understanding towards the government. They're going to try and come and push the agenda of the opposition, Neighbour. I think that's what they're doing right now, and they should be definitely called out for it. They're being disingenuous again, Neighbour. Another unpatriotic move again from another organization who tend to tout their number, neighbor, claiming they always told that they're the largest union in the country and stuff like that. But they definitely need to understand themselves, neighbor, and try to show some form of compassion and understanding.
Yeah, you think that public sector group Scratchy will need to back down a little in terms of their demand, just based on what the country has to go through now. You think if there's a time when we have to come together and deny ourselves of something for a little period of time, I think we have to do that now, don't you think?
I mean, definitely, neighbor, 32% of our economy gone, neighbor, 40% of our economy, gone, neighbor. You would definitely have to expect that you would definitely have to share some form of understanding in a time like this. I JTA don't watch whatever funding a year that is coming in. Most of this funding that is coming in is toward the direct rebuilding, neighbor, rebuilding process or program that is to come through
Not going to consult fund.
Definitely, not for consolidated fund.
Hold on. Go ahead.
So whatever funding that they say are here about coming in, neighbor, they need to just be understanding. You guys are teachers. You guys should be the ones who set the example. You guys should be the one who are leading by example. You're educators. Our students and our future is dependent on you guys. So lead by example, man. Show some form of understanding. Show that you guys are really educators. Show that you have an understanding for the economy work. Show that you have an understanding for governance work. And show that you're a human being. You have some form of compassion. You have some form of understanding. That's simple traits that we are all as human beings. I don't think you take an educational background to show some form of sympathy.
Yes, but what does it say of such a union, though, Scratchy, that in the middle of a hurricane recovery, you are going to write to the government saying, ride and whistle. In other words, whilst you deal with the recovery, deal with our matter at the same time. Very, very insensitive, Scratchy. Very insensitive.
Very insensitive, neighbor. I'm just so shocking, neighbor, that we have so many teachers, neighbor, who I would expect don't share the sentiments of the leadership of the JT, and these persons rather remain silent than come out and say that, I mean, why we don't support this. We stand with the government, we stand with the people, and we stand with our economy. By extension, 40% gone out of our economy. That is something that you should have some form of understanding towards. Again, you guys are educators. You guys are not like other public sector groups who can rebel and cuss. You guys are the security forces with a different level of patriotism to our country and our economy by extension.
Okay. And Scratchy, last week, Mr. Ralston Hyman said that Christmas was going to crash in Jamaica, really. Poor people will have no Christmas. But I see where the BOJ is saying today, Scratchy, that more than $300 billion is in the economy. What was Mr. Hyman talking about?
Again, neighbor, Ralston Hyman, neighbor. Ralston Lyman, neighbor. Someone who supports the opposition very heavily, neighbor. Again, even though he supports the opposition, neighbor, not a guy who has always been fair or transparent or balanced in his pronouncement towards the economy. I mean, someone who I thought was a rumbar economist, neighbor. That's my title that I give to him, neighbor, rumbar economist. Someone who cannot speak about the economy unless you have some form of alcoholic beverages or substance in the system. So you know that when you see a person like that, neighbor, you know you have to be careful of what this person say. No, when you talk about, neighbor, about whatever the government was taking, whatever the Bank of Jamaica was taking out of the economy, and saying that person, neighbor, what the Bank of Jamaica was doing, neighbor, was taking up certain amount of money out of the economy, neighbor, so that they have a balance and inflation. Neighbor, the persons who are going to take up this is not a little normal man like me and you, neighbor. It's persons who are very deep pocket, because this money is something that will be locked off and taken away out of the economy for a period of time, whether it be a short term or long term based on our recovery process. So it was a very, again, neighbor, a very unfortunate statement from Mr. Ryman and Mr. Lyman.
Yes.
But that won't affect our economy in no way, shape, or form, neighbor. And again, coming out of a disaster, neighbor, to have over $300 billion floating around in the economy.
In the economy, Scratchy. Amazing.
In one of our most festive season, neighbor, that show that the spending power might see an increase in spending power, neighbor, even if we don't see an increase, neighbor, in personal spending power, neighbor. there might be a wider reach, there might be a more extension towards persons who have the ability to spend this Christmas. So persons don't just look at it and say that your personal life didn't move in any way, shape, or form and use that to judge the economy. Someone who didn't have anything last Christmas might be in a position where he or she, neighbor, can take care of their family and their household for this Christmas. So that's also that's a result of the economy. So again, neighbor, don't use your own personal circumstances to judge the economy.
Yeah. And then Scratchy, the government is saying that in January, the distribution of house repair grants will start in January. Would you have wanted it to start a little earlier?
Definitely, but I wanted it. I was expecting it to start. I know how Jamaicans live. I know we value Christmas, and I was expecting that it would have happened before Christmas. The distribution would have happened before Christmas. But again, we have a responsible government. We have a government that is driven by data. So maybe the threshold that the government is aiming to reach in terms of the data collection, they didn't reach a threshold, or maybe neighbor to a certain extent, neighbor there are certain land. Again, the land, one of the major issues that is holding up the government is the land. It's not the government's ability to provide building materials, neighbor. It's the government's ability to go ahead and start to provide these things and start the rebuilding process, the construction itself. The land is holding up this thing, neighbor. So again, neighbor, it might be the land. Why a lot of these things, the government, I don't think the government wants to give this person aid to go and get the material, and you get the material and you still have to wait a month. So definitely, but a person just have to be patient. I myself wanted it to be earlier, but if it can't be earlier, I mean, sometime whenever it happens, that will be even much better. And again, I think about January, tampering season, tough month, I think a lot of persons will be much appreciative of what is to come for them in that time. They might have used it to do other unscrupulous ways or unscrupulous means. I try to sell whatever gain they get in this festive season. Because the festive season is nearby. Everybody's trying to get something, but I we just have to understand it. We just have to understand.
Yes. Okay. Let me go back. Do you understand the toll system in Jamaica, Scratchy?
I mean, yes, if it's the same as when I left, when I visited, yeah.
Yeah, and you understand how Jamaica became how these toll roads were brought about in Jamaica?
I believe it was the PNP administration who introduced us to tolls.
Yes. Scratchy, there's a piece of road from Maypen to Williamsfield that has been for free for the last 2 years, just before the local government election. You remember when that was?
Yes.
Yes, and now there is a notice out that road is to be tolled. If you drive a class 1, I think it's almost $500. Scratchy, don't you think the government erred when it did not introduce the toll on that road more than 2 years ago?
I mean, sometimes, yes, neighbor, I think to a certain extent, when time persons are used to a certain thing, neighbor, it becomes a norm. I think a lot of persons might have said, yes, it has become a norm using this toll road for over 2 years. Mr. Edward Siaga Highway, when that one was finished construction and the test run, it was just for a month. It was open just free to the public just for a month. But this one, now we see this one was open for 2 years. But to on the government side, neighbor, I think the publication was made on neighbor that this road was definitely gonna be a toll road. I think
but then you have people driving on it for more than 2 years, Scratchy. And no,
they say that it was because of the negotiation. They were negotiating how the rates were supposed to be, how they were going to charge the rates and stuff like that. So I think a publication was also made that this door would have been open in 2025, December 1st. 2025 was a publication. I mean, if they missed that mark, I think it is now open. So one of my things, neighbor, why I don't really curse these we have tolls here in Canada too, and very expensive, neighbor. But only thing with our toll road is, neighbor, you don't pay right away, you know? You can drive money, but you don't pay right away. But one of my things, neighbor, that I look at, neighbor, I would have an issue, neighbor, if that toll road, neighbor, was the only route via to Mandeville, neighbor. So once there's an alternative, neighbor, I'm not someone who's gonna cry over it that much. I would just have to understand that it is not up to me, neighbor, to make to make whatever moves I need to make. Whether I need to move earlier,
Yeah,
or I need to move
you have a choice to make, but then you have to fix the bad road, man. You have to fix
exactly,
the road.
exactly. That is where the issue lies now. Wherever the alternative route is, that road should be in a condition no lesser than what the toll road is, because you must, you
Did you
must
say no
make.
lesser, sir? Did you say no
Yeah?
lesser?
Yeah, it shouldn't be no less than the toll road, neighbor. It shouldn't be. It should be in the same comfort level, road shade, road valley, or road work. That road is always called because an alternative, neighbor. And when time you put cash, when time want to a cash, neighbor, we know so once you put up cash, that's an hindrance to people moving from point A to point B. And one of the things is you cannot hindrance people movements through via cash. So wherever a toll road is, there must be an alternative route that is free, and that route must be in a roadworthy condition. I would definitely expect that from the government.
Yes. Well, I tell you, it's a ticklish one. It's a route that I travel often. As a matter of fact, it is now going to cost me, if that is implemented, almost $2,000 to go to Mandeville and to come back. That's a lot of money, Scratchy.
Definitely a lot of money, neighbor. Definitely a lot of money. But there's an alternative that you can also take,
And then I have to deal with my front end, and I may burst a tire, because I can tell you, as a matter of fact, the alternative route is almost a cow pasture, because when you're driving on it, you see cows all in the middle of the road. Anyway, things are
definitely, but I'm neighbor going into next year, neighbor. I'm definitely expecting to see an increase in the misery index, neighbor.
Yeah.
As to the budget, neighbor, that the government is to come with come April, neighbor.
Yeah.
Will have to be one of the most strategic budget, neighbor, probably in the history of Jamaica, neighbor. Well, I think the Prime Minister is up to the task, definitely. But the budget, neighbor, would definitely be something looking forward to.
Yes. No, Scratchy. Move on to the whole matter of crime. The government is experiencing tremendous success in the area of crime. But somehow, Scratchy, it seems to be lost in the news and in the discussions in Jamaica. I know that you are a man that knows the subject quite well, Scratchy. Why is it that Jamaica is not more engaged? Why is it that Jamaica does not see this as a Christmas present? A 42% cut in our crime, Scratchy, in my view, is a monumental achievement, What's happening in Jamaica while we are so tuned out from this marvelous news?
For me, neighbor, it's also a monumental achievement as well. If I'm looking from a different level. But if I should look at it from a lower level, neighbor, I think there's a psychological effect, neighbor. I think that that as Jamaicans, we have gotten so used to crime, neighbor, that despite, yes, neighbor, we see that over year-to-year date, there's a reduction in crime. But, and I don't want persons to drag me or judge me on this, but just try to be from a logical level, neighbor. The potential of crime, neighbor, is still high, neighbor.
Yes.
Despite, neighbor, yes, we have a 42% decrease, but, neighbor, the potential, neighbor. And again, neighbor, I think one of the things that happened with us this year in particular, neighbor, where we have the 42% reduction. Even though we had a 42% reduction, neighbor, we had a lot of mass killings, neighbor, mass shootings. And I think those mass killings and those mass shootings, neighbor, had a psychological role or a psychological effect. I know a lot of persons view crime and they say, okay, the numbers are going down. But just upon the news and them say 5 man dead around here. So it's like that, just amplify back the brain that you're saying to yourself that yes, crime, they're saying that crime is done, but why am I seeing these mass shootings so often? But yes, neighbor, but looking from it from a real level, we understand that yes, crime is done 42%. And I think, neighbor, that same way like how when time crime was high, it was a factor that we use it, neighbor, to affect the psychological thing, neighbor, of persons, neighbor. We should also use the reduction, neighbor, in crime, neighbor, to kind of set back the psychological rethinking of persons, because persons still are living within that thinking that yes, crime is down, but the potential or the ability for crime to increase, neighbor, is still It's
Very
still
high in
there.
Jamaica.
Yes, it's still there. But
No,
it's a
no. If I
wonderful.
say to you, Scratchy, you're below the age of 50, correct?
Definitely, yeah, but yes.
Yes. If I say to you, eh, Michael Manley, what comes to your mind?
Michael Manley, based on what I have heard, neighbor, what come to my mind is a weak leader, neighbor. I see Michael Manley as one of our weakest leaders, neighbor.
You were not born during his time, though.
No, neighbor, I was not born during this time in the neighbor, but I remember I went to his funeral.
Oh,
I remember very well, neighbor. I went to Michael Manley funeral. He buried at Heroes Park. And a community by the name of Fletcher's Land. That's also my place as well. And I was there and I went to his funeral, neighbor.
Okay. And you are versed, are you not, in the politics of Jamaica? You know the politics well, right?
Yes, neighbor, definitely to an extent.
Yes. And so if I say to you, Edward Siaga, what would you say to me?
I mean, Edward Siaga, neighbor, nation builder, neighbor, Mr. Institution, neighbor. Someone who had the best interest of Jamaica at heart.
For Manley, you couldn't find anything to say, but for Siaga, you immediately jumped that he's an institution builder. Why?
All right, when you compare the history of both men, neighbor, what we hear about Michael Manley, neighbor, and what Jamaica suffered during the Michael Manley, neighbor, time, neighbor, is not anything where we're in this segment I will try to highlight, neighbor. It's stuff that kind of cringe me, you know, to know that.
Yeah.
The Michael Manley was pushing Jamaica towards socialism and stuff like that. I'm not someone who believes in socialism, neighbor, no time. You know, so definitely, neighbor. What I have heard about him, yes, he was someone who wanted to build houses, neighbor. And I get that. The reason why I also said he's a weak man, a weak leader is I get an understanding, neighbor, that this guy had some form of good that he meant for the people, neighbor, but he wasn't strong enough, neighbor, to stand up against the bad factors who was around him, and he allowed the bad factors, neighbor, to use him and made him look bad as well in neighbor. That's how I see him.
Okay. And then you move on to Mr. Siaga, and what comes to your mind?
Definitely, Mr. Institution, neighbor, someone who definitely had the best interest of Jamaicans, I think, at heart, neighbor. A man who ruled Jamaica for 9 years, neighbor. When you look at the things that Mr. You know, the Archers NTA, the free zone and stuff like that are locked down, you know. The thing, Petrojam, a lot of other things, the gullies, Portmore, a lot of other things, neighbor. You can just spew off the top of your head for Mr. Siaga, even though he was demonized by the opposition, neighbor. And I think this is one of the reasons why he was demonized, so that they could try to hide or kill his legacy.
Okay. And then if I say to you, PJ, what comes to your mind?
Our longest ruling Prime Minister, neighbor, and the Prime Minister, neighbor, who had the awesome opportunity, neighbor, to rule Jamaica when it was a glorious time around the world, neighbor. No major atrocities, neighbor, no major hurricane in the 90s, neighbor. No world recession, neighbor. No world health disease, neighbor. Smooth time of the world, neighbor. When this was the time, neighbor, what you call the golden age of the world, neighbor, the 1990s. This is the time when a lot of countries. This was a period, neighbor, where a lot of countries found their wealth.
Economy grew by about 3.5%.
Neighbor, this was the period where a lot of countries around the world found their wealth, neighbor. This was the period, neighbor, where a lot of countries around the world found their self, neighbor. What a lot of countries are known for right now, neighbor. Yes, neighbor, but despite that, neighbor, Mr. PJ Patterson, neighbor, had us in a struggle, neighbor. I went to school, neighbor, the whole time under PJ Patterson as the Prime Minister of Jamaica, neighbor. I was a child at the time. And I could see the hardship, neighbor, but because the hardship was it's not like it was just so plentiful around me, neighbor. It was like the norm, you know. Yeah, it was like the norm. But being an adult now, neighbor, and getting a better understanding of what life is, and now being able, neighbor, to compare then to now, neighbor, I can safely say that, neighbor, Mr. PJ Patterson, neighbor, despite being our longest serving Prime Minister, neighbor, was an abject failure, neighbor, to a certain level, neighbor.
You think so?
Yes, neighbor. A lot of persons might say that he is responsible for a lot of also programs or policies and stuff like that. But yes, neighbor, but on a certain level to take the country to that to move the country, neighbor, when the rest of the world was getting ready for the generation 2000, neighbor. I think we fail, neighbor.
Yes, and that FinSac debacle really was a pain, eh?
That FinSac debacle, neighbor, cost us 40% of our economy in the 1990s, neighbor. A big setback, neighbor. We weren't financially strong to go into the G2K, the new generation, neighbor. We failed miserably, neighbor, to move in advancement of certain technological advancement. We were set behind the PNP, neighbor, and the PJ parties. They like to tout themselves and say that it is because of PJ why we now have cell phone. But it's not because of PJ why we have cell phone here. PJ didn't need anything out of the box and go and search a cell phone. Cell phone came to Jamaica. Anyone who was government at the time, neighbor, would have been responsible for the inception of rolling out a telephone service in Jamaica.
Yes.
So it wasn't anything out of the box, neighbor, anything new. I can't see anything, neighbor, out of the box that I can say, neighbor, as a result of this that PJ Parties instituted, neighbor. We can safely say, that yes, Jamaicans are benefiting from this, neighbor. Yes. A lot of persons, neighbor, they like to tout NHT and stuff like that. But I always tell you, and I'm not afraid to shame or anything to tell you that NHT is an object failure, neighbor. NHT is nothing to talk about, neighbor. NHT is such a shame, embarrassment to know that you have an agency that call themselves National Housing Trust that is a work with so many cash and look at the living condition of our people. So NHT is definitely a failure, neighbor. Definitely a failure. And I definitely think, neighbor, that the NHT up the whole change need to be done and government need to be approached. I don't know if it's because of the name that is attached to it, neighbor, or because of what, neighbor, but we need to change that. Michael Manley is no longer among us, neighbor. And whatever vision or whoever created NHT, whatever vision they created NHT of, neighbor, that is not the vision of 2025 and going forward. And we have to change the vision and the mission of NHT. The way NHT is being operated, neighbor, it needs a holistic approach. It needs a holistic approach, a holistic change. We cannot continue to operate like that. About housing agency or housing trust with so many cash, and we have our citizens them living in such deplorable condition. Jamaica has reached a stage now, neighbor, where we introduce a social mortgage. I am fully 100% for a social mortgage.
Okay, fantastic. You know, Scratchy, I was telling my listeners earlier that I attended school in Kingston from Mandeville, and I remember how horrible it was for me. I used to take the bus, and if I left Mandeville at 2 o'clock and not reaching town till 7, because the traffic would meet me at the factory in Sandy Bay. And I remember when the government constructed the Old Harbour bypass, and the bus would bypass Old Harbour, only to find that the toll road that was built from taxpayers' money was integrated into the Highway 2000 and now became a toll road. You know, Scratchy, I think the Jamaican people have been sold short, you know.
Neighbor, Jamaicans, neighbor, up to now, a lot of Jamaicans, neighbor, still don't understand where we are at right now, neighbor, and where we are coming from.
You see that cross? You see that one over Portmore, there, sir, where the people have to pay so much money for the cross to come in at Kingston. Remember, saying live at Portmore, you know, Scratchy.
Exactly.
And when you talk about alternative route, wow. You know, Scratchy. Me, I tell you, there are some contracts that we have signed in Jamaica and given out for some people. It no fear for you know. Because you see the one at Old Harbour, sir, I can tell you, every time I go through Old Harbour, I am angry. I am angry to know that we built that bypass from taxpayers' money. The bridge down at Spring Village, them abandoned it. That bridge must have cost $30-40 million to build. And it was abandoned. And they integrated that bypass into the toll road, and we don't have to pay. Pulling up back the traffic in our Harbour. Anyway, it's Scratchy. I think we have been shortchanged as a people.
Definitely, neighbor. We have definitely been shortchanged as a people, neighbor. We are just seeing now and just getting a better understanding, neighbor, of how government work and how government should operate, and how what person and what us as citizens should expect from a government. We are just starting to see that, and we are just even now, neighbor, starting to understand where our tax dollars work. All along in the 90s, neighbor, we were being taxed higher and high, neighbor, not knowing what is to come next. So I think, neighbor, that a lot of person just need to go back in their archives, neighbor, and look and see that every single major project that had to deal with the development of our lives as Jamaicans, neighbor, was either sabotage, hijack by the PNP, either through cronyism, neighbor, some form of nepotism or corruption, which will automatically lead to corruption. When you talk about even something like the highway, neighbor, that same highway we're talking about there, neighbor, that highway was overrun by how much in billions of dollars, neighbor, when that highway was under construction, and delay on top of delay. When you talk about fixing the housing structure in the education in our system, neighbor, they had something what they call operation failure, pride, operation shame. And when they did that, we fail again in that, neighbor. How many monies were robbed up in that? When you look at the persons who were the beneficiary and those persons' personal character and stuff like that, and what those persons were engaging, and you see that those persons were the ones who benefited from that, neighbor. So every single major project, neighbor, that had to do with the development of Jamaicans, neighbor, and the well-being of our country, it was either sabotage, hijack, or it was used, neighbor, as a money pond for the PNP through cronyism. And Jamaicans need to really go look back and understand some of the things that we blame this government for right now. These things, neighbor, where the government from the 90s failed us for. They failed us. I remember in the 90s going to school, neighbor, the principal alone of car. Going in the school car, no, neighbor, you think it's a park, you think it's a car lot.
Quite right. You're quite right. You must go down a whole over. Go look. The police station don't have parking lot. The police take over the whole
police have car right now, neighbor. So when you look at how this place has changed, how this place has developed, neighbor, I know common person. When you look at how many taxis on the road, our common man can't own taxi. PNP talk about it.
I was traveling the other day, Scratchy, for 1 mile. 1 mile. And I said to the person in the car with me, count how much pro box we will count in 1 mile. 50 odd pro box, Scratchy, in 1 mile. 50 odd pro box. And a pro box is not a cheap car, you know, sir.
Yeah, but that was done by the JLP administration. You know, I mean, people don't even remember, neighbor, say, is when Bobby Montague was the Minister of Transportation. Bobby Montague revitalized and changed the transportation sector. I mean, now normal man can just come apply and get acne carriage and get route license and stuff like that. So a lot of persons don't know what is going on, neighbor. And these persons need to go back in their archive and just look at their personal life in the 90s and compare it to now.
Then okay, let's move on then. So you said that then if I call the name Sister P, what would you say now? What would be Sister P's? She celebrated her 80th birthday over the weekend. Angela Brownberg wrote Sister P at 80 in the Gleaner. I've been trying to look at Sister P's legacy at 80. People say I'm to leave Sister P alone. But can you remember any notable achievement from Mama P?
I mean, Sister P, neighbor, our first female prime minister. But despite being our first female prime minister, you are not spared of criticism, or spared from criticism, neighbor. And,
yes.
And looking at Mrs. Simsimila, neighbor, Mrs. Simsimila was used as a pawn by the People's National Party, neighbor.
Well, go ahead.
They themselves, neighbor, they know that she didn't possess certain major neighbor skills, neighbor, to become a prime minister, neighbor. But they use her based on the fact that her popularity, neighbor, and they push a feminist agenda, neighbor, saying that yes, you're a first female prime minister.
Strength of a woman.
Strength of a woman. It resonated with a lot of Jamaicans, neighbor. It resonated with a lot of Jamaicans. They said, yes, hooray, we have our first female prime minister. It seems similar now, neighbor, in terms of her stewardship of the country, the prime minister.
Hold on, Scratch. You know, I heard Mr. Golden, sir. When Mrs. Simpson was elected as a party leader by Mr. P.J. Patterson in Africa, Mr. P.J. Patterson, in addressing the crowd, said that she was the only chance the PNP had of winning the election, you know. Only chance. Remember that Omar Davies ran, sir?
Exactly.
and Carl Blight,
And
and
Carl
Peter,
Bright
and Peter Phillips.
and Peter Phillips.
Yes, and Mr. Patterson said Portia was the only child. Big up yourself, Sister P. Mr. Golding said at the time that if Portia had called the election, they'd have won with Kingston.
Yeah, but
It was so
when time
popular.
Portia Simpson Miller became the leader of the People's National Party, neighbor, the popularity that surrounds Portia Simpson, she blundered, neighbor, when she waited to call that election.
Oh my God, Scratchy should have won in a landslide.
Neighbor, she would have won in a landslide. She blundered,
I don't
neighbor.
think you could have hold on to West Kingston. Hold on for opportunity, you think, or we were just not ready for this, eh?
In regards to?
In regards to Mrs. Simpson Miller, her legacy.
Okay, as I said, neighbor, not much that we can tell to say about Mrs. Simpson Miller, neighbor. I mean, our first female prime minister.
Almost forgotten, eh?
I mean, yes, neighbor, definitely almost forgotten because no real or tangible impact, neighbor, left in terms of policy or tangible stuff that we can look and say, yes, this is a result that all the countries benefit from as a result of Sister P, you know? But definitely, neighbor, again, as I say, neighbor, the People's National Party is an organization, neighbor, that tend to use their leaders, neighbor. They use their persons for political gain and use them as pawn. And I think a lot of us as Jamaicans, even if you're not a PNP, can look and say that Mr. Simpson Miller was definitely used, neighbor, by the hierarchy of senior members of that party. She was also sabotaged.
And they treated her terribly. You remember Mr. Knight talking about people reading a speech, and if you play for Broadway, they treated her bad.
Again, neighbor, yes, they knew of her educational background, neighbor. And I want to tell you, neighbor, in the 2007 election, that I show you such how of a class Mr. Bruce Golding is. I remember in that debate, neighbor, Bruce Golding was asked a question of what if he would like to talk about Mr. Simpson Miller education. And when it was his turn, neighbor, he said that he had no comment.
Right.
Yes, he said that he had no comment. He will not comment on her education. So, again, neighbor, I think she was used. I don't think she was definitely used by her party, neighbor, based on her popularity and her agenda, neighbor. Someone who, neighbor, who also blundered a lot, neighbor, in pronouncement as prime minister, neighbor. A lot of statements, a lot of speech, a lot of things that she said that contradict a lot of things and left persons to really say if this is the leader that we really have,
Yes.
But again, congratulations. Our first female prime minister. Happy belated birthday, Mrs. Simpson Miller.
Yes.
And we love you as Labour, right, no matter what.
But you can't find anything. Here's a bit of the debate.
There are many countries that don't have our resources that are doing better than this. And therefore, we have outlined a framework of policies that are designed to move Jamaica out of this slum. Designed to create an environment that is friendly to investment. If we are to get growth, we need investment, but not any kind of investment. We need investment that creates jobs. We want investment that generate revenue so that we can tackle the critical problems that the country faces. That is what the Jamaica Labour Party offers the people of Jamaica in this election.
Thank you very much, Mr. Golding. Now we will hear Mrs. Simpson Miller's opening statement.
Good evening, my Jamaican family and members of the diaspora, ladies and gentlemen. I have demonstrated in my first year and a half a leader that has the interest of the Jamaican people at heart. And that's why I implemented programs to assist that while balancing the books, I balanced people's lives. 600 million on rural electrification to impact the lives of 20,000 Jamaicans. Portable water impacting the lives of 162,000 Jamaicans. I would like to say to the Jamaican people, when I announced the free health care for children 18 and under, it became an issue. This is a leader that cares about her people. And if Mama is in charge, she must take care of the children. I just want to say to you, fellow Jamaicans, mothers, fathers, brothers, grandfathers, sisters, let me say to you tonight that it is time you will not just listen to the negative voices and the voice that will say to you, we have achieved nothing. We have achieved much, but there are plenty more things to do. And that's why.
Mrs. Simpson,
Hold on. Let's listen a little more to Mrs. Simpson.
we again hear from Dion Jackson Miller, and she will direct her question to Mrs. Simpson Miller.
Mrs. Simpson Miller, the government minister who has made the most mistakes in office is Mr. Paulwell. He made several of those mistakes before you became prime minister. You not only kept him in the cabinet, you gave him increased responsibilities. What reason is there for Philip Paulwell's continued prominence in governance other than your need to reward a political ally?
I did not reward a political ally. I think, if anything, the entire country can agree with me that this young man took a new ministry, a difficult ministry. He revolutionized the telecoms sector, worked very hard on looking at the diversification of our energy sector. In so much so, I know I got commendation from the President of the United States of America on our ethanol project.
Thank you, Mrs. Simpson Miller. Mr. Goldie.
Anyway, that was a little bit of the of Mrs. Simpson Miller as she celebrates her 80th birthday. Happy birthday, Mama P. But nothing much she achieved for Jamaica Scratchy. Nothing much.
I mean, if we're going to be frank and judge Prime Minister based on their achievement, neighbor, nothing much by Mrs. Simpson Miller, neighbor. Nothing much. Nothing much, neighbor.
Well, to tell you the truth, because I've looked at it in terms of the time when she became prime minister. It was a time in the political arena where a lot of females actually became
not hearing you, Harry. Not hearing you. Okay.
And Mrs. Porter.
Go ahead, Scratchy.
She was definitely neighbor, and I think one of the things that went against her neighbor was the fact that she was going up against someone like a Bruce Golding neighbor. I think Bruce Golding intelligence neighbor, without him directly disrespecting her or pointing at her neighbor, showed her up as well neighbor as the opposition leader. I think Mr. Golding neighbor, that we always spoke neighbor, or we speak where he command the audience neighbor. Mr. Golding was someone who could also speak on any type of topic neighbor. Meanwhile, Mrs. Simpson Miller would have told her that to go to a specific minister. I don't ask, she asks the PNP. So Mr. Simpson Miller was a person like that neighbor. But I think Mr. Golding, who she was going up against, kind of put a dampen on Mrs. Simpson Miller shine.
Yeah, but I think this statement here by Mr. Golding speaks to where Jamaica was and the type of, because I'm going to him next. I want you to think about Mr. Golding, because he became the prime minister. But listen to Mr. Golding as he describes the problems Jamaica had when he was about to take over. Listen to him.
Thank you very much. The People's National Party has been in power for the last 18 and a half years. During that period, with the exception of the first 2 years, Jamaica has never achieved as much as 3% growth in any 1 year.
So for 18 years, Scratchy, we never achieved 3%.
In the glorious 18 years of the world, the rest of the world was growing at 28% neighbor.
Oh my.
For that period, we have accumulated 460,000 persons who either can't find work or have given up trying to find work.
470,000 people in Jamaica couldn't find work, Scratchy?
Definitely, neighbor. The job market was very, 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 very dark in Jamaica, neighbor. Low wages, neighbor, low skill. So persons were working appetite wasn't there back in the 90s, neighbor.
Wow.
That 18 and a half years, the PNP. The Jamaicans were living as hustlers, neighbor. Majority of the country was hustling in the 90s. That's when the PNP is the one who brought in that type of mentality. Hustling in Jamaica.
Go ahead.
During that period, we have accumulated a debt that is now costing the people of Jamaica $550 million every single day to service.
Scratchy. Scratchy. He's an excellent communicator.
I tell you about this guy, neighbor. Neighbor, this guy is a guy that went to St. George's College at the age of 10. This guy leaves St. George's College, neighbor, at the age of 15, went to Jamaica College. Peter Phillips has been going to Jamaica College from first form, and they say the first in the history. Normally they don't do this. If Mr. Golding go get the head boy over him, neighbor. Mr. Golding is not a normal man.
All right, listen to him. Hold on.
Now costing the people of Jamaica $550 million every single day to service. More than we spend on health, education, security, and all the other government services combined. Over that period, we have seen the murder rate climb from 413 in 1988 to as much as 1,500. And during that period, we have seen our schools continue to graduate young men and young women barely able to read and write, rendered unemployable. Jamaica can't continue to operate like this. We can do better.
Scratchy, every time I hear that, I think that we underestimate the value of the golden period. He inherited a terrible hand, Scratchy.
Neighbor, you perfect thing, neighbor. We underestimate, neighbor, the value of the golden term, neighbor. Neighbor, not even the term, even before. A lot of persons don't know where Labour Party is coming from in the neighbor. A lot of persons don't know the shambles, so disorganized and the problem. You see the opposition PNP that you're seeing right now, guys, Labour Party was in a worse situation than that. Neighbor, when Bruce Golding came back to the Labour Party, neighbor, a unity that was formed, neighbor, I don't know which other leader could have bring back that unity to Labour Party at that specific time. Everyone rallied behind him, neighbor. Everyone believed in him, neighbor. And they led the Jamaica Labour Party to victory, neighbor, in 18 and a half years. I've been in opposition for 18 and a half years. Bruce Golding, neighbor, when he came into power, Bruce Golding, neighbor, was the one who come and changed the whole governance structure, neighbor. I told you before, the opposition leader never have no office. There wasn't no leader for an opposition leader.
The Constituency Development Fund. Bruce
Golding. You didn't have no Constituency Development Fund. You didn't have no Indicom.
Yes.
You didn't have no debt exchange and all of those things, neighbor. Bruce Golding, neighbor, was the one, neighbor, who come and put Jamaica on a different level so that any other government, neighbor, whether PNP or Labour, right, form the next administration, neighbor, they have no other choice.
This is the man that caused the shift in governance in Jamaica.
Neighbor, Bruce Golding was the one, neighbor, who plugged the wall down at wharf. When you could go down a wharf, if you have certain caliber and go take a care of a wharf, neighbor, it's Bruce Golding. Neighbor, why you think people hate Labour right? Because Labour right was Bruce Golding come and stop out all of the hustling, neighbor. Bruce Golding come and plug all the holes, neighbor, all the loopholes. The Jamaica cash was flowing left, right, and center. It started from Bruce Golding. This was the man who come and changed the landscape, neighbor. This was the man who gave the PNP in charge of the committees of parliament.
Yes.
This was a man of a different type of leader, neighbor. I mean, I tell you, it was just, God knows what's best, neighbor. But as I say, this man, neighbor, wasn't a normal man. Jamaicans, by extension, even PNP, they love him. You notice, neighbor, he's only one of them don't to bash.
Oh my goodness. I want Jamaicans again to listen to the hand. Because it's very important in terms of context, you know. The hand that he was dealt when he became Prime Minister of Jamaica. I rate him very highly, Scratchy. Listen to him again.
Thank you very much. The People's National Party has been in power for the last 18 and a half years. During that period, with the exception of the first 2 years, Jamaica has never achieved as much as 3% growth in any 1 year. Over that period, we have accumulated 460,000 persons who either can't find work or have given up trying to find work. During that period, we have accumulated a debt that is now costing the people of Jamaica $550 million every single day to service, more than we spend on health, education, security, and all the other government services combined. Over that period, we have seen the murder rate climb from 413 in 1988 to as much as 1,500. And during that period, we have seen our schools continue to graduate young men and young women barely able to read and write, rendered unemployable. Jamaica can't continue to operate like this. We can do better than this. There are many countries that don't have our resources that are doing better than this. And therefore, we have outlined a framework of policies that are designed to move Jamaica out of the slump, designed to create an environment that is friendly to investment. If we are to get growth, we need investment, but not any kind of investment. We need investment that creates jobs. We want
Scratchy, he describes a slum, that he was inheriting a slum. And then he speaks, Scratchy, of the debt. But then, Scratchy, nothing was working in Jamaica. Education was failing, health was failing. What was the money being used for?
Money was being used, Neighbour, to kickbacks, to illegal contracts. So we have every single contract that was run by the People's National Party, Neighbour, was overrun, over budgeted, everything. And Neighbour, before I get into that, I want to also make a valid point that our Prime Minister, our current Prime Minister, Neighbour, that we so love and honor and respect, Neighbour, it's Orrit Bruce Goldie, Neighbour. He gained in popularity, his leadership skills, to be a leader, to lead a ministry, under Orrit Bruce Golding. Orrit Bruce Golding believed in him. When time Orrit Bruce Golding was stepping aside, Orrit Bruce Golding tell him that this is the young man who's going to lead the party. No runoff, no race. And then till him lose the election and he was challenged and he overcome the challenge. But Neighbour, there's a lot that is owed to Orrit Bruce Golding to cover Jamaica.
Lest we forget the removal of cost sharing and fees from hospitals. Scratchy.
All of those things, the removal of cost sharing, the fees at hospital, Orrit Bruce Golding, Neighbour. All of those things, Neighbour. New government led by Finance Minister Alisha, wonderful cabinet. He came in, Neighbour. He put a lot of things in place, policy-wise, program-wise, Neighbour. A lot of things. He was the one who started the increase in how many money we started to give to schools per student. He was the one who started everything with the security forces and stuff like that, Neighbour. This is a wonderful Prime Minister at that specific time in our history, Neighbour. One that should definitely be given his props. One that should be remembered. And I know all of us as Labour, right, Neighbour, we appreciate and love Orrit Bruce Golding, Neighbour, for bringing us out of the wilderness of 18.5 years, Neighbour. And because of the wonderful work that he did, Neighbour, he also bring on a lot of persons to win, Neighbour. Orrit Bruce Golding is one who kind of draw back the middle class to win, Neighbour. Because we lost that middle class in the Neighbour. And Bruce Golding, Neighbour, brought back that middle class into the corners of the Jamaica Labour Party, Neighbour. We saw we were a lot of high top persons out there in society, Neighbour, drawn to the Labour Party in 2007. That is when the People's National Party started to lose grip on the upper society, Neighbour. And those persons came in line, they saw, they bind to Mr. Golding's vision. They overwhelmingly funded the Jamaica Labour Party as an opposition party, Neighbour. And Mr. Golding bring us across the line with a 2-seat or a 1-seat majority. We came out victorious 2007. 2008, Neighbour, you know, the world recession, you have to be scaled again. It is always the Jamaica Labour Party, Neighbour, who face all of the difficult times of Jamaica, Neighbour. All of the problems that Jamaica go through, whether they are only if they are man-made. PNP only create the man-made one. But all natural one, Neighbours, and external factors, Neighbour, that we have no control over. It is the Jamaica Labour Party who has steered us and guided us through that, Neighbour. Alright, Bruce Golding did that through the recession, and Jonas did it in Corona, and he's doing it now again in Melissa. The Jamaica Labour Party, Neighbour, they're the saver for this land.
Yeah, in terms of his legacy, you have quite eloquently articulated a quite extensive summary of him. Now let's move on to well, after him you have Wholeness, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now what is the Wholeness legacy?
I mean, the Wholeness legacy, I think one of Mr. Wholeness, the first legacy neighbor is to know that Mr. Wholeness will go down in history neighbor as our youngest prime minister ever, at the age of, I believe, 38. Youngest prime minister neighbor. Yes, a very young prime minister. He went and called an election neighbor within 2 or 3 months of his tenure as a young prime minister, went to the people for his own mandate.
Stop a minute, Scratchy. When I said manly, you barely found a word. And when I said PJ, you basically went nothing. You couldn't find anything to say about Portia. But when I say Golden and Wholeness, you are, you know what? Why?
And again, neighbor, it's not because I support the Jamaica Labour Party, neighbor. Anyone can fact check me on everything that I'm saying right now. I'm sure that I'm not telling any form of lie. So I get neighbor, I will not lie because I want things to look fair or I want things to seem balanced, neighbor. I have to call the truth with the truth. The truth will always fall with fall. So if you're asking me about person's legacy, neighbor, and what they live, I have to talk about what is there. That persons can also relate to. I made mention that it is Bruce Golding who created the office of the opposition. There was no actual building for the opposition leader. Mr. Siaga was opposition leader for 18 and a half years, or whenever. He must name have an office to go to every day. No, Mark Golding have an office can go to every day. So those are the things that you talk about when you say legacy. But for Mrs. Simpson Miller, I cannot deeply say anything nearby. Yes, you told us that you would get IMF deal in 1 week. It took us it did not mean 1 week, neighbor. It did not mean 1 week.
But of course you got it in 1 week.
I can't lie, neighbor. I can't lie.
Viewers, apologize. I'm continue. Viewers, apologize.
Sorry about that. Grab a drink and grab some nuts. A little bit of fruit in the night. What you're having as your snack, as your nighttime snack. Having tea? You're having tea? Or you're having a beer? Well, there are 3,000 roses in the box and you should have been sending 3,000. Why haven't we got any roses tonight? Why? We should get 3,000.
Gonna make me feel the way she used to do. Yeah.
Oh, you born to queen. Pizza, you warm it up in the microwave.
Now that my
McDonald's, oh, you having McDonald's? Hello, Cindy. You only send 1 rose? No, you can't send 1. You have to send about 20. Lorna Bennett is having yogurt. By the way, Scratchy, what you having? What you having there in Canada? It's so cold. What you having?
I'm a stout, you know, neighbor. I'm a stout.
You're having a stout. And but I tell you something, I'm quite hungry right now. I'm gonna have to get off. And I think I have a little bit of chicken there, you know. Hello, Nikki. How you doing? Harry Henriquez, what has the wife provided for you tonight, Harry?
Oh, actually, just have some eater tonight, neighbor. Just some Chinese. Okay. Some Chinese, you know, like a pork chop, soy, and shrimp.
Some Chinese, okay. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much, yeah. Can buy 2 sorrel beer tomorrow. Lucky girl, Mo, 28. Can buy 2 sorrel beer. Come on.
Now that my love is overdue.
Post the Zelle account for me. Post the Zelle account for me, Harry.
I don't know just what to do.
Let's lift up the Gregory one more time. Lift up the Gregory one more time and post the Scratchy. All right, so we only have a little time left. So Scratchy. Yeah. I wanted to test whether or not you were analyzing straight down the middle, or you were showing your obvious bias towards the party. And you are saying to me that the listeners themselves can judge based on what you are saying. Because indeed, Scratchy, there is no notable achievement that the nation can point to during the periods of prime ministers. For example, you definitely can say that Golding was responsible for the removal of cost sharing. That is significant, eh?
Very significant, neighbor, because that benefit the whole country, neighbor. Unlike PJ Patterson, neighbor, who created Emancipation Park, and even and persons who have understanding know that, neighbor, when Emancipation Park was created, neighbor, there was a lot of backlash towards that park, you know, neighbor.
Yes.
You come from certain places in Kingston, neighbor, you couldn't let anyone see you in that park, you know, neighbor.
Yes.
Because of whatever backlash. Again, with the introduction of the JUTC at the time, neighbor, we saw where that bus company also came under a lot of backlash already to her as well, neighbor. A lot of persons didn't want to take those type of buses for whatever reason. So you see that the PNP has never done anything in a way or a shape, neighbor, that has always drawn the attention and let Jamaica say that yes. But again, neighbor, there's not much that I can say from a holistic approach where all of Jamaica is benefiting from, where I can pinpoint on a lot of these persons. And it's just sad, neighbor, that history and the disappointment fall on the side of the PNP. I didn't purposely did it, neighbor. It's history and their own performance.
Yeah. So you say Mrs. Simpson promised that she would have negotiated in 1 week.
I mean, yes, neighbor, that was Mrs. Simpson made a pronouncement, neighbor, that she would have gotten us an IMF deal in 1 week, neighbor. Instead, neighbor, they came to us, neighbor, with an austerity program, neighbor. A program that had us under a deep chokehold, neighbor, was suffocating us right through. And you know, Jamaicans voted them out back in that time, neighbor, because Jamaicans won't please, neighbor. Yes, we understand that we were under IMF agreement, a very stringent one too, not one of the most stringent IMF deal. That I don't think even Greece was placing a deal like that, neighbor. Yeah. Despite us not being in a sort of situation as Greece, but there's not much, neighbor, that I can say from Mr. Simpson at a point from a holistic approach where I can say that yes, based on this, Jamaicans are benefiting from it, and this is as a result of Mr. Simpson policy and stuff like that. But with PJ Patterson, neighbor, he was a longer prime minister. So yes, I'm not gonna say that there's nothing that he has done, neighbor. He has done, but neighbor, I think that a prime minister, neighbor, with the tenure of a PJ Patterson, neighbor, a whole lot more could have been done, neighbor. A whole lot.
No. We are still in the wholeness era. During those early days, Scratchy, especially after he lost the 2011 election, many wrote him off.
Neighbor, we could see the immaturity in him. I'm not saying immaturity in the immediate sense, but immaturity from a level where, neighbor, it wasn't an easy thing, neighbor. It was his first time being a leader to a certain level, neighbor, running a country. Yes, he was a young 38-year-old, neighbor. There has never been any other, very few countries in the world, neighbor, even have the ability or the honor to have a prime minister or a leader that young. So, neighbor, he went into something that was very, very new to him, neighbor, and familiar charters, neighbor. He went in there, he called the election, neighbor. He lost that election, neighbor. I personally believe that, neighbor, he should have waited. He never should have called that election. But he went neighbor, through whatever advice he was getting from persons who might have more political sense than I do. But he went neighbor, he called the election, he lost that election, neighbor. And despite losing that election, he was challenged for leadership of his party. He stand up strong, neighbor. He bounced, he won that challenge. And I think, neighbor, that 4 year or that 5 year for where Mr. Holness was in opposition, neighbor, I can personally see that, neighbor. And this is probably one of our first leaders, neighbor, that we have literally seen, neighbor, grown right before our eyes from an immature state, neighbor, to a level right now where, neighbor, this man is a masterclass leader, a leadership of quality. So we can safely say that, neighbor, this is a leader, neighbor, that we can identify with, neighbor. We saw him at his lowest, neighbor. We stand with him at his lowest. I know he's at his highest level, neighbor. We appreciate him, neighbor. Neighbor, as I always tell you, neighbor, anyone who try to work on their personal self and their personal development, neighbor, I would definitely get my respect, neighbor. And I think Mr. Holness, neighbor, did that, neighbor, with his time in the opposition, neighbor. He went in and he found out better about the politics, how the parliament. He knew about the parliament already. He has been a member of parliament from 1997. But the inner runnings of being a government and being a minister, know how agency run, neighbor. He also work on his leadership skills himself. And I think that he came out much stronger, neighbor. 2016 election, neighbor, he came out with a majority opposition party coming with wonderful plan, make a believing in. And from 2016 till now, neighbor, his legacy is still writing, neighbor. And one of the main things, neighbor, Mr. Holness will be remembered as the youngest prime minister, and not just our youngest prime minister, neighbor. One of the prime minister, neighbor, who was giving Jamaica our neighbor money to let Jamaica have a better appreciation of what is our economy and our economy works, neighbor. And he will definitely go down again, neighbor, as one of the prime ministers, neighbor, and leaders of Jamaica, neighbor, who presided over one of the longest period of no new taxes on the backs of its citizens. Again, neighbor, one of the leader, neighbor, who will also go down as the prime minister, neighbor, who revamped the total security apparatus of Jamaica, neighbor. This man has come and put the military and the police, neighbor, on a total development and a total different level. No other government in the history of Jamaica has invested the amount of money in the security forces like the leadership of Andrew Holness government, neighbor. When you look at social programs, neighbor, Andrew Holness will also go down, neighbor, as one of the prime ministers has also come and revamp social program. Yes, PNP are going to say that they're the one who created PART, and PART was in from PNP time. But based on where PART was, neighbor, to where PART is right now, neighbor, I can say that PART is now, it's more being more impactful, or is more having a better approach. We see where the Prime Minister has been unique and bringing style. We're back to school September. He offer back to school grant in terms of getting uniform and stuff like that. So yes, neighbor, he will definitely go down, neighbor. You have another legacy for the wards, kids who born in the ward of the state after independent, I believe 2012 or something like that, neighbor, 2016? Yes. 2020? One of those years, I don't remember the exact year, guys. Sorry about that. But there's a program that the Prime Minister bring in where I believe that after these persons become age 18, neighbor, they'll be eligible for 800,000 or something like that. So again, neighbor, these are long-lasting things, neighbor, that will definitely have impact. When you look at an organization like the Archers NTA, neighbor, baby neighbor, former Prime Minister Edward Philip George Siaga, neighbor, we saw where our neighbor, Trust NTA, neighbor, was watered down under the People's National Party, neighbor. And we have seen now, neighbor, we under this Andrew Holness government, neighbor, this guy has totally revamped Archers NTA, neighbor, put Archers NTA on a total different level. Neighbor, anyone living in Jamaica, I will tell them right now, neighbor, that the cheat code is Archers NTA. Anyone. The cheat code right now, neighbor, is Archers NTA. So definitely, neighbor, his legacy is not finished, and I don't think there's a time where we can go through everything. But a Prime Minister, neighbor, who is still putting his mark on Jamaica, neighbor. A Prime Minister who have totally revamped the restructure of Jamaica. When you look at the road the road network of Jamaica. Persons don't remember, neighbor, that it's the Jamaica Labour Party who revamped the whole Constant Spring, moving from a 1-lane road to a 2-lane, neighbor, on both sides. Persons don't remember that coming out. A lot of persons did a lot of things that this guy has done, neighbor, that persons tend to not understand and believe that this is not an easy feat. And these are things that should have been done from in our days in the 90s when the rest of the world was growing at 28% and Jamaica could barely grow at 3%. So I would say again, neighbor, that PJ Patterson, neighbor, I a lot of person respect him from his personal life and based on his academia and his accolades and stuff like that, neighbor. I can say that yes, he has achieved a lot personally, neighbor, but in terms of what he has done for Jamaica, neighbor.
All right, so let's get to the score because I'm out of time. Here you have Manley, 1 out of 10. Where would you score him?
For me, neighbor, Michael Manley will definitely be a 4.5, neighbor.
4.5.
Yeah.
Asiaga?
Mr. Siaga, neighbor, a prime minister for 9 years, neighbor. I will definitely give Mr. Siaga a 6.5 or 7. I'm being real with my markings.
Yes. And then you come down to PJ.
Oh, Percival, neighbor. If it's based on tenure and the ability to win elections, Percival will definitely be a 8 or a 9 out of 10, neighbor. But again, I'm judging on legacy and long-standing legacy, neighbor. And the only reason why I will gonna give Mr. Percival, neighbor, a 3.5 or a 4, neighbor, is because of his tenure. But I really, and person might be saying, why Scratchy judge or mark PJ so hard? I cannot mark Percival, neighbor, as a Michael Manley, neighbor. I cannot mark him like how I mark a Edward Philip George Siaga, neighbor. And I cannot mark him like how I mark a Porsche or a Bruce or Andrew Wallace, because his tenure, neighbor, has been longer than them. And if you understand how these things work, I would have to judge you based on your tenure. And based on your tenure, I think you fail us and you should have given more to us. And we definitely should have, we deserve more. So I cannot rank him to a certain level. And that's just so sad.
Now you come to Porsche.
Definitely again, neighbor, Portia Simpson Miller, neighbor. I mean, our first female prime minister. Short period of time, maybe 5 or 6 years or less as a prime minister, neighbor. Not a lot of things, neighbor, that would definitely push and say that he should leave certain landmark. But I would definitely rate Mrs. Simpson with a 4.5, 5, neighbor. And my reason, neighbor, for rating Mrs. Simpson 4.5, 5 is I think Mrs. Simpson Miller, neighbor, was one of the leaders, or probably the only leader of the People's National Party, neighbor, where I think she shared some affection, neighbor, or some type of respect, or she saw something in Andrew Michael Wallace as well. And she saw something in, and she had a different admiration and love and respect for Mr. Siaga, and I think he had the same for her. I think she was a bit different type of leader, neighbor, towards Jamaica Labour Party supporters.
Down to Bruce.
I mean, Bruce Golding, neighbor, again, a very, very unfortunate situation, neighbor, serve a very short term, 1 term or less. A prime minister who had a lot of potential, neighbor. The prime minister who really basically kind of set Jamaica in the part that we are on right now. A man who came and changed a lot, neighbor. And within his short period of time, neighbor, I think Bruce Golding could be ranked anywhere from 6 and 6.5, neighbor.
Wow.
Based on the impact that he has had on the economy and the institution that he has created, neighbor, within a short period of time. And I know that, neighbor, that a lot of things that we are touting and benefiting right now from is as a result of programs and policies that were started or instituted by Mr. Golding.
Yes. And then the present one, still going.
The present prime minister, neighbor, Jamaica Golden boy, neighbor. Despite
He's what? He's Jamaica's golden boy?
Definitely, neighbor. Jamaica's golden boy, neighbor.
Oh my.
Definitely will go down, neighbor, as one of our best prime ministers, if not right now.
Yes.
Definitely, neighbor. I mean, neighbor, it is going to be very difficult to judge him because he's still in office, neighbor.
Yes.
But if I should judge him, neighbor, based on where he is right now, neighbor, and I am not being biased, so far, neighbor, I will give this current prime minister, neighbor. And the reason why I won't finish judging him, neighbor, is still to come. There's still more to come. It's because of the fact that he's still in office. So I'll give him anyway right now, neighbor, from an 8 or 8.5.
Yes. Wow. So then, Scratchy, you have had Manley, Portia, PJ, Siaga, Bruce, and Andrew. The Labour Party team is coming out looking better.
Definitely, neighbor. And this is not anything that I am spewing or any misinformation that I'm spreading. Persons can go back and look at the history, look at the tenure of Mr. Siaga, look at the tenure of Mr. Manley, look at the tenure of Percival, look at the tenure of Portia Simpson Miller, and look at the tenure of Andrew Wallace. And I think the reason, neighbor, Andrew Wallace alone, neighbor, has single-handedly outdo all of these former PNP Prime Minister, even without the help of Mr. Siaga and Mr. Golding. Andrew Michael Wallace, neighbor, what he has done, neighbor, in a short period, neighbor, has outdone them in every single way, shape, or form. This is the first time, neighbor, that we have seen a government to move and change our taxation system, neighbor, from direct to indirect taxation. We have seen where this government continue to come to the public and tell us that, guys, we have exceeded our tax limit. We have exceeded that limit. So definitely, neighbor, this is a prime minister. That's why my reason for giving him 8.5, but that a person might say, why Scratchy judge him so hard, is because he's still in office, and I don't want to give him a 10 right now, and then I can't be able to move above that. So I know that there's room for improvement, neighbor. I'm not going to come here and tell anyone that Jamaica is in where we need to be, neighbor. But one thing I can definitely say that is Jamaica is not where we used to be. I want to continue to give this prime minister the strength, continue to pray for him, neighbor, and continue to believe in him, neighbor. Our golden boy will definitely continue to shine, neighbor. And Jamaica alone, and I'm not being political and I'm not being biased, neighbor. I'm being factual. I'm talking as a Jamaican. And Jamaica aloneness. And I don't know why a person might say they don't like him or stuff like that, but definitely, neighbor, to like someone, even if you are not personally benefiting, neighbor, from what is going on in Jamaica, you have to benefit, you have to give him praises, neighbor, because you can see where a lot of other person's life have changed. Even persons who 5 years ago or 3 years ago were living in certain conditions, you have seen improvement in those persons' lives. So again, don't be selfless, guys, don't be selfish. It doesn't revolve around you, neighbor. And sometimes, neighbor, why we cannot use our own personal situation to judge how the economy is going, neighbor, because despite whatever the economy is offering, neighbor, we live our own personal life and we make everyday decisions. And some of us, neighbor, the reason why we're in a spot that we're in right now is because of decisions that we made 10, 15, 20 years ago. That is what is affecting our ability to earn in a way that we can say, yes, this is livable, or a way that we would want to. So we have to understand, neighbor, that our life is not shaped by Andrew Wallace. Andrew Wallace has been the prime minister 10 years ago. Some of these people are suffer from 20 to 40 years ago, neighbor. So I want to stop blaming Andrew Wallace and getting ourselves together. Definitely.
Boy, Scratchy, you're brilliant, you know, son.
Only to some neighbor, only to you and some neighbor. To some of these persons, Scratchy is a real neighbor. But as I say, I'm not seeking anything from them.
Scratchy's a what?
To them, neighbor, Scratchies are no Scratchies are there. Scratchies are done, neighbor. There are a lot of these guys, neighbor. I tell the neighbor before we speak in private. And if you notice my style, neighbor, I come on live and I disappear. I don't come here and I look no clout, I don't look at chase any clout or anything, neighbor. I just come here to just spill the facts out there, neighbor. To help my country, I help my party, and continue to let people get information. I have no other agenda apart from that, neighbor. So I respect your accommodation, though, neighbor. Trust me.
No. But listen, I respect you, sir. The program is what it is because you have stood by my side from day one, and I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, neighbor, man. No problem.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes.
I saw somebody asking regarding Donald Sangster earlier. But it's just a few. Despite his short time, he was one of the founding fathers who drafted the Independence Constitution, as well as the joint as well as the what was it called again? The getting us credible for the international market. So those are two things he did in his short time.
Boy, Scratch, Harry, I don't know what happened to you tonight, man. You have to go do better, you know. You've come so far. Don't throw. Harry. Yeah, he's gone. He's gone again.
You mean, neighbor?
I hope we can talk tomorrow, sir.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort it. I'm not sure what's happening with my speaker.
Yeah. You want to get a phone, man? Listeners.
Christmas gift.
Yes, of course. Listeners, we're going to get Harry a phone, all right? Not an iPhone. That's going to be it for us tonight, until tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. So far, don't throw